Hello and welcome to the New Indian Express. Today we received our union budget for 2026-2027, and along with that, we can see a lot of mixed opinions around it. To cut through this clutter of information and to understand the budget as it is, we have with us our consulting editor, Mr. Gurveer Singh. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Arjun.
Before asking you any questions, I would like to actually listen to your take on the union budget as it is.
Yeah, so I've watched many budgets, Arjun, but such a such a sort of flat and visionless budget, I should say, I have not seen before. I mean, the facts are before us. The market crashed 2%, nearly 1.99%. It was down. BSC was down about 150, 1,560 points or so. And the possibilities are that the market will probably go down further tomorrow when it opens. Uh, see the If you see the market well, it's primarily to do with the stocks, to do with corporate understanding, but it also reflects a certain sentiment. And the sentiment is definitely negative. People have not come out fully against it, but the market shows that it didn't really inspire much confidence. The reasons are very simple. There was a lot of expectation from the market that some things would be done. For instance, uh, capital gains. This has been repeatedly talked about by bankers. Mr. C.S. Shetty of of the State Bank has voiced it very strongly that banks are losing out deposits because of this variation in capital gains, and it's a huge variation. 30% for capital gains, 30% for bank deposits, and 12.5% of instruments which are on the stock market, like mutual funds, etc. Now, this huge kind of deficit or difference is creating a crisis for banks. People are not coming forward to invest with banks, to put their money in banks. And this has actually created a small crisis for the banking industry. So there was an expectation that this
Right.
kind of inequitable kind of capital gains policy would be evened out. It was not. So this was an expectation which did not happen. And on the other hand, there were significant changes which have been made. For instance, security transaction tax on FNOs has increased to 0.05% from 0.02%, which is again damaging a stock market which is already under pressure. There's been, in fact, if you take from September 2024, where the market was at its peak, to now, we are actually negative. We are negative by about 3,000 BSC
Hmm.
points. And about the result is that about $23 billion has been drawn out by FIRs. So some kind of confidence measures to allow FIRs to invest, to draw in foreign capital, to draw in foreign investors was also expected, which was not done. There was an expectation that the budget would be long term, would avoid any short term kind of concessions, but would be very heavy on the long term. That to some extent has happened, and that is a positive. For instance, the fiscal deficit has been trimmed to 4.3%, which is, I must say that the government has made a positive on this. A couple of years ago, they promised that from a 9.2% deficit, the deficit would be reduced by half, and that was performed. I mean, in the sense, there was a projection of about 4.2%. And the last year, I mean, over the last year, the economic survey records that the deficit has fallen to about 4.4% and is further to be trimmed by 4.3%. So in fiscal conservation, at least, there has been a good performance, and the government is trying to stick to it that that there should be some fiscal conservatism, which will then control prices and therefore control inflation and the livelihood of people. So that is definitely a positive. There were other major city development proposals which were very positive. For instance, the government has decided to have seven high-speed corridors connecting big cities, Mumbai and Pune and Hyderabad, Delhi and Varanasi. And these will be high-speed communication systems, which will not only galvanize infrastructure, but will also make travel and other things very easy. So these are, some of the positives we have to think about. 500 crores has been also a fund which has been created to pursue city development. At the same time, the big bang headline kind of announcements which would galvanize the economy, one does not see that. So essential positives are there. For instance, again on infrastructure, capital outlay has gone up by about 9% to 12.2 lakh crore, which is excellent because this will finance infrastructure. It will kickstart parts of the economy which have been lying unstable and sort of freezing out. Those areas will be very positive. So you'll have development of airports, you'll have development of transportation, roadways, etc. So this 12.2 lakh outlay for capital outlay is extremely positive. And if one sees it in context, it has gone up from 2 lakh crore about 10 years ago. It's gone up almost 10 times, which shows a certain proactive aspect of the government to push infrastructure development in this country. So these are some of the positives. Yet the big headline news, the big headline announcements which will move the economy, one does not see it. People were, for instance, there was an expectation that MSMEs would be given a kind of a good package so that they could develop. Let us see that this has to be seen in the background that you have a geopolitical crisis, you have a geopolitical turmoil going on. At the same time, in this crisis, the government is trying to create certain pushbacks, certain kind of packages which will sort of soften the blow. Now, these geopolitical turmoils is something which we cannot control. The Ukraine war, trade tariffs being imposed by the United States, these kind of aspects have to be dealt with. And one doesn't see the budget really dealing with these aspects. So MSMEs is one of the main suffering sectors because most of their exports were to the US and to these tariff areas. And one expected some kind of additional concessions. But all you have is two funds being created, a 10,000 crore fund and a 2,000 crore fund, which will be for renewal and for lending and for credit stability. But, I mean, when you're talking of a million MSMEs in the country and you have, 12,000 crores, it really doesn't sound that anything much is being done. Again, there have been, announcements for development of tourism and heritage. Excellent, I would say on their own, they are excellent initiatives. Uh, they sort of provide heritage development, they provide employment because 10 to 15,000 strong workforce will be created to as guides for these heritage spots. Hastinapur is being talked about, other spots are being talked about that these would be developed as heritage spots. This is a good thing, but in the whole, when you're talking of a big budget and you're talking of a big country, these are literally, small droplets in the ocean. Again, the other aspect which I've been trying to see and it's being discussed by economists is a lot of announcements being made, but there's no capital outlay for those areas. For instance, waterways. There's an announcement for waterways that 7 waterways would become functional, and there would be a creation of additional sort of outlay on waterways, but there's no outlay for that. Again, we have a lot of talk on creation of facilities for veterinary colleges, for veterinary hospitals, animal
Sir,
husbandry in general. Now, there's no,
would you?
yeah, please, you were asking
No,
something?
I wanted you to. Yes, I wanted you to elaborate a little more on the water outlays point because then it would be easier to understand. Like,
So
what
all
do
I
you
was
mean by
saying
it?
is that You see, the important the an important area which the budget takes up is providing employment and development of certain areas in the rural areas. Now you find that in
Right.
agriculture and farm, you don't have very much in the budget, either in the way of employment or any kind of other concessional lending or anything. You have some
Right.
amount of outlays and some amount of at least proposals for the development of fisheries. Uh, Interesting, which is development of 500 hubs for fisheries where specific export-oriented activity and development of
Mm.
fish culture for exports will be developed. Then you have a very interesting aspect which is very positive, which is that catches within the nautical control of the Indian state, any catch of fish within that
Mm.
block would be treated as duty free, which is very positive. Again, a positive for
Right.
more people deploying investment as well as a job creation in the fisheries aspect. But also those fishing trawlers and boats docking on foreign ports will be treated as an export catch, and will automatically they don't have to register it, or they don't have to come back to town and register that paperwork, but it will be automatically treated as an export item. So these are positive things. But on the whole, if you see,
Mm-hmm.
agriculture has gone completely unnoticed in the
Right.
overall. There's nothing
Right.
for boosting farm output, especially when in a condition when farm distress is extreme. Farmers are committing
Right.
suicide because they have overborrowed. They're not able to return the loans they have taken. At the same time, there's drought in some areas of the country. There are floods in other parts of the country. How does the government tackle that? The rural household savings have almost dried up. This is what the banks are commenting on.
Right.
At the same time, there is no relief for these areas. So you see that the rural economy overall does not figure much in the budget, which is definitely a negative. So,
Mm.
these are some of the things which have been sort of prominent criticism of the budget. Again, you know, for instance, youth unemployment, big issue. So what does the government do about jobs? Which are the areas which are going to generate jobs? There is an indirect, of course, appreciation that there is a big capital outlay for infrastructure development. But exactly, are there any schemes? Are youth going to be drawn in, uh, etc.? There's nothing much on that. Again, capital flight is a major problem. Like we mentioned, 23 billion, has gone out of the country from January 2025 to now, $23 billion. Now, there is a reverse sort of capital movement which is moving out from the country. One of the reasons is that the investors find that the investing in India is not very easy. The ease of business is not very good, and the returns, the taxation policies, etc., are a little stiff as far as foreign investment is concerned. So this movement has gone out. So is the budget should have made policies which are positive to a reverse movement of capital. And if you see,
Uh, I had one question, sir, on that point, on the capital point.
yeah.
One of the experts whose article I was reading, he was stating that this budget sort of shows that it appeals to the global rating agencies, right?
Mhm.
And what I thought from that was, if it is appealing to that, maybe it is one of the attempts to attract foreign capital. Is it not the case? Would that not
But
help the foreign
I don't
investments in
see,
any way?
I don't see any specific policies which will, which are sort of, I mean, if you can name one or two, I don't see any policies which is sort of directed to FIIs, foreign investment sort of cartels or foreign investment funds, for them to come in easier into the country. Uh, Whatever was there, that continuum is there. But you see, the point is the context is different. Today, the Indian stock market is performing 20 to 30% below other peers. If you take
Right.
average, you see, you take the Asian stock markets, or even if you compare it to, say, the US stock markets, the performance is about 30%, 20 to 30% below that. Now, if one of the
Mm-hmm.
reasons is the flight of capital from India. Now, how do you reverse that? So like I said, the stock market is today about 2,000 points below September of 2024. People have lost out on mutual funds. People have lost out on equity, their equity investments. So people are out of pocket today. So how is all this going to be reversed? You see, at the same time,
Right.
household savings are low. Savings are low. So retail investors have sort of evaporated in India. This has created
Mm.
actually a run on mutual funds. It's created a run on bank deposits. So there is a squeeze on capital. How do you reverse that? So, the budget should have had answers to these questions. It obviously doesn't. Again, there was some relief expected for middle class, for lower middle class. So on direct taxes, again the budget is absolutely zero. There is no mention on direct taxes. There are, of course, concessions on the indirect taxes front, where there is customs duty relief for items like cancer medicines and drugs, aeroplane manufacture, parts of aircraft being imported, as well as microwave ovens being made easier, their parts being made easier. So some little bit of consumer, kind of a few consumer items will become cheaper. But overall, if you see, even to the middle class, there are very few concessions. You see, it could be possibly that in terms of taxation, the government feels that whatever tax reliefs they had to give has been given in the form of GST, and through the year. And GST was a big bang concession which had been given. So having done that, why should you make another concession at this stage? So that's why I think partly that is the thinking within the government, that at this stage don't touch the direct taxes because concessions have already been made as far as buying and consumption practices of the middle class. They've made it easier for the middle class to buy goods and to spend easier. So why again
Mm.
cut direct taxes, cut income tax and things like that? So that one can understand. But overall, you see, the I come back to the same point, and we can end at that. Otherwise, if you have some questions, you can ask that. Is that we are in a
Mm.
geopolitical atmosphere, in a world economy which is hostile and which is becoming more and more protective. So our exports
Right.
are getting screwed in many ways. We're not able to export freely because tariffs have risen everywhere. Of course, we have positively
Mm.
signed a trade deal with the European Union and a couple of other countries too.
Mm.
But overall, exports are under pressure. And a lot of the industry depends on these exports. Now, in this hostile atmosphere, even within our regional bloc, we have bad relations with Bangladesh, we have bad relations with Maldives, everyone except Afghanistan, again Sri Lanka, Nepal. So the regional SAARC bloc, which used to be a regional trading bloc, has also fallen through. Now, in this situation, you need very specific policies which will sort of rekindle the confidence both regionally as well as internationally. You need policies whereby trade as well as influx of capital into the country would improve. Now, you see, this was absolutely necessary in the context of coming months and years where things are going to get tougher for the country. And that, unfortunately, uh, the budget is sort of silent on those areas. So that I think is a definite miss. So as the situation changes, whether it's internationally or nationally, the budget must answer with a vision, which I find missing in this. And that's, I think, the problem which we are at.
All right. I think you have covered everything, and so we will end on that note. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, sir. That was
Thank you,
a
Arjun.
very